One of the scenes in Kolchak that I loved, but it just made me laugh because of how over the top it was, is when the vampire comes out of the hospital and like the entire police department is there. Just when you think, wow, that's like everybody's there. Another car shows up, and then there's another guy who runs in. This is like all of a sudden it's the Blues Brothers.
Yes. Let's record a podcast where we talk about stuff.
Sure. Yes, well, let's introduce our very first guest ever.
That's right.
On Prodigious Saps, Mr. John Campbell.
Hello, everybody.
Yes.
Finally. Finally. For those of the uninitiated, Chad and John don't know each other. This is like a secret date.
Worlds colliding, right?
Yeah, worlds colliding. But John and I have been doing a podcast since the pandemic. Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, which is us. What is it you always say? You have such a nice intro. What is it? We're charting the legacies.
Charting the legacy, the cinematic legacy of the classic monsters.
Oh, so very nice.
At your Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Phantom of the Opera, and Gill Man.
Invisible Man.
Invisible Man, too, and the very underrepresented Gill Man.
He's very unrepresented, the Gill Man. We just don't have a lot. But we started with the Universal films of the 30s in the pandemic, and we did a movie a week, and we're now up to the 2000s.
I know, it's crazy to think about. Because, it just started with you and I sort of being bored with nothing to do in the pandemic, and we had both bought on some kind of lightning sale the Blu-ray box of the Universal Monster movies, and we said, what if we just started doing one of these a week? That'll keep us sane. And then we got through those faster than you'd think, and then we're like, let's do the Hammer monsters. We'll just keep going with Hammer. And then we got through all the Hammer movies, and then we're like, let's just start charting them through time. So then we just jumped to the 1970s, and then we did the 80s, 90s, and now we're in the middle of recording the 2000s. We're like,
and watch how I'm about to segue into something Chad and I have talked about recently. The 70s, as John can attest, and I can attest because I lived through it, was rife with, weirdly, TV movies became a big thing, especially for like the monsters and things. They went to TV a lot, and one of our absolute favorites, which should be everybody's, was the TV movie The Night Stalker, which begat a second TV movie, The Night Strangler, and then a one-season show, which was actually very influential, even though its merits are debatable, but KOLCHAK, The Night Stalker, which we also did a short podcast because it's only 27 episodes, where we were in and out. Or is it just 20 episodes?
It's just 20. It's just 20. They got their order cut because of low ratings. So actually, they got held back down to 20 episodes. Yeah. I think The Night Stalker is not only the best of those 70s TV movies, but it's possibly the best made for TV, like made for network TV movie. I'm not including like stuff that HBO has made, but it's such high production for it's so much better than it should be.
Smart. Yeah, it's much better than it should be.
So well written. It's so well directed and acted. And
now we find out if Chad did his homework.
We were chatting about this before you jumped on. I did watch The Night Stalker, the movie you was just talking about. Finished watching it this afternoon, actually.
Oh, okay.
And I started trying to watch one of the episodes from the show. And
then you went, ugh.
The Spanish Moss Murders.
I got a little ways into that.
That's one of the best ones. That's
right. That's what Brendan said.
Yeah, there are probably. What did we say? We figured this out.
There's like three maybe really great ones, and there's Horror in the Heights, Spanish Moss Murders, and I think at that point
the vampire. It's the vampire, right?
I like the vampire. I also like the zombie.
Yeah,
but no, there's so many.
I'm a big fan of the werewolf one, even though the makeup doesn't hold together. I think the werewolf episode is very fun, though. It's a werewolf loose on a cruise ship, and that is just a crazy idea that I love.
Chad, if you ever get a chance to watch that one, just be prepared. It is a man with cotton balls glued to his face that they have liberally applied some shoe polish on, and you're like, wow, watch out for the scary werewolf.
And this is if you listen to Meet the Monsters, you know this would be the standard defense. I would have something. You get Kolchak stalking this thing with a shotgun on the it's so cool. I like it. The only thing that's let down really is that makeup, because the whole idea of the singles cruise and 70s TV icon Dick Gautier being his like swinging roommate.
Dick Gautier, who we covered recently, Chad, because he was Robin Hood in, as everyone kept saying, when things were rotten, because I kept saying when times were rotten.
Right.
And everyone
First person
in
to
the
correct you, of course, was Robin.
Of course, it was my brother. And I knew it was when things were rotten. It's just that got stuck in my head, and I just kept saying it. And then, of course, everyone in the message boards, hey, by the way, our listeners, I do appreciate you guys letting us know when we've messed up. But damn, cut an old man a break.
It's hilarious.
I hadn't seen that since I was like 8, so calm down. Anyway,
people cannot resist correcting people on YouTube. It's hilarious.
No, of course not.
No,
and TikTok.
Yeah,
so Chad,
I mean, same on my podcast too.
Did you recall when you watched The Night Stalker and part of that episode? Did you recall any of that from the time, or had you never watched that before?
No, I think I did have. I had seen it, and I don't. It was probably in reruns, I would imagine, because I think I was probably too young to be watching that kind of stuff when I was when it was originally running. But yeah, I totally remember it. I've seen Darren. Darren McGavin. I recognize his face because he's been in 8 million shows. Yeah. To use your number, Brendan. Is 8 million still your number, by the way? Is that
8 million is still my number. My go-to comedy number is always 8 million.
I was going to say people probably most know him. His probably most iconic thing is the father in A Christmas Story, right?
Yes, Darren McGavin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
Most remembered as,
okay,
Amongst
it's a prestigious award.
I mean, and it is an amazing performance in that movie. He's incredible in it.
Oh, he could do it all, and
but
I mean,
even in the worst,
he could do hard bitten stuff, but he had such a good comic touch. He was just this character actor to end all character actors.
We love guys. Our favorite guys on the Monsters podcast, and now we're doing a whole show about Vincent Price because he's one of these guys. Is we love guys who are always great, even when the material isn't. Those are our favorite
because
actors.
Even the bad episodes of Kolchak the Night Stalker, Darren McGavin is batting for the
there is
Raptors.
always we would one of the things we did on our Night Stalker shows, we always had our favorite like Kolchak one-liner or zinger or in a phrase, because even in the worst episodes there was something he said that was just like, oh, he just got that guy somehow, you know.
Zing. So did you enjoy it, Chad?
Yeah, I did, and it was John already mentioned how well written it was, and that was the thing that was sinking into me as it went along. On top of the fact that Darren again just sells the whole thing because his performance is so authentic, and I don't know, is that the right word, authentic? He's got so much integrity in his performance. I mean, he is Kolchak,
even though he could be seen as maybe a clownish character, and the people in that world see him as possibly a clownish character because he's running around in an outdated seersucker suit and he's got the straw hat and all that stuff, and they're like, Jesus, man, he's definitely not the swingingest dude of the 1970s. But at the same time, as you said, he's got this crazy integrity the whole way through. And I love always in every kind of fiction and film and TV shows, I love relatable human heroes. The last person you'd expect to save us all is that guy. I love that stuff. Just like when we were talking about war games a couple of times back with you, Chad. And it is a thing where I love when it's like, who's going to save us? That guy? I love that stuff. And Kolchak is, he's the original Sculler and Scully and Mulder, the Sculler.
The Sculler, yeah. No, I was going to say the thing I love about is the put upon nature of it too. He's not a guy out seeking to stop stuff, but it's sort of like particularly starting that movie. It's like, I found this vampire who is a threat to the world. No one else is going to believe me, so I guess I have to destroy it.
Yeah, that's what I love. It's like it's sort of like no one believes me, and I've tried to tell the proper authorities. They don't believe me. They think I'm crazy. So
I don't want to.
I guess I'll go stake this guy in his place in Las Vegas.
He's not a Van Helsing where it's like his sacred charge to do battle against evil. It's more like, well, I tried to tell the proper authorities, and they're not listening, and that thing has to be stopped. But he has such a moral code.
He just wanted a byline.
He just wants to cover it, but it's like if no one else. We did talk about as the show goes on, it is because it's the 70s TV and continuity isn't really a thing. You do start to go like, well, every episode he seems to stumble into these things. And one thing you in particular, Brennan, always brought up is, why does he never question why are these things always coming to him?
I mean, in modern shows like like in the 90s, when Chad and I were hanging out a lot and watching stuff, like we would get together with our friends, and yeah, I'll give Dwight a shout out. Hey Dwight, how you doing? When we'd like when we'd watch stuff like Twin Peaks, or we watched X-Files together a lot. And one of the smartest things about X-Files was Chris Carter taking the Kolchak template and then saying, let me smarten it up by giving them a reason and also giving them continuity to where they're like, I mean, it did stretch it very thin where Scully forever is like, well, I'm not really saying that this is supernatural, or not really saying that was alien. You're like, okay, lady, you're delusional at this point.
Literally been abducted by aliens and experimented on.
But at least it was a thing where where they weren't hitting the reset button episode to episode, which is what they did in the 70s, where Kolchak is never going like, are you kidding me? A werewolf? I've already dealt with vampires. There was a zombie. What is this? Why is it me?
Every once in a while, there'd be like a brief kernel of a mention. One of the reasons I like that vampire episode from the show,
it's a direct tie-in.
It's a direct sequel.
That was going to be my question. Yeah,
it's one of his victims from
one of Janos Skorzeny, the vampire from the TV movie. One of his victims is coming to LA. Yeah, she's a vampire, and apparently she was one of Skorzeny's victims that no one had known about. So she shows up in LA, and Kolchak puts those pieces together, and he stops her. So it is it's a sequel.
Wish there'd been more stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd love that. Because the only thing is, you get Vincenzo occasionally going like, is this another one of your wacky, weird stories, Kolchak?
The only thing that is established is that he stumbles onto the supernatural, and people are aware of that. But yeah, it does. Yeah. I think we also talked about at a certain point, Vincenzo should just be like, let me guess, it's a zombie.
What is it now? A Gill man? I hear they're underrepresented.
They never had a Gill man on the show, but they did have that reptile that lived underneath the city.
That's true. They did.
Now, when you say Gill man, I assume you're talking about the creature of the Black Lagoon.
We are
absolutely
from Black Lagoon, who affectionately named the Gill man,
who had one good movie.
I don't think a franchise has taken a steeper dive in film history than that first to second creature from the Black Lagoon. The first
it's absolutely true. First one's great.
Classic, still holds up. Such an incredible piece of monster filmmaking. Second one, utter garbage. And then the third one, somehow even worse.
Even worse. The Creature Walks Among Us is one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen.
Film. Truly atrocious.
And I've seen childhood films of myself. I got it a dig. Zing, zing, zing. Anyway, I'm so glad that you got to visit that, because it is a favorite of John and mine. And Kolchak, the character, is one of my faves of all time.
Oh, I totally can see why. And there are two threads where there's several things that struck me as funny when I was watching it. And I had to run it back to watch the last couple scenes, because I was wondering what happened to the victim that's in the house. They don't even mention her in the wrap up at the end. Like, what did the cops do with her? Because they forced his fiance or his girlfriend to leave town because she was an undesirable element.
Yes.
But I guess because she knew what was going on or something, or she was one of the people who had knowledge of the
because Kolchak had spilled the.
But what happened to his victim? He was still alive when the.
Oh, she wasn't still alive. Oh, the one that was the blood bank. The girl that was the blood bank.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I don't think that's ever dealt with.
Shelley Forbes.
Loose thread.
She's still alive, and she's like, okay, I'll be quiet, whatever.
Chad, you know something? You've given me an idea for like fan fiction or a sequel. I love it. Thank you.
I was going to ask, was she the one who showed up?
That would have made sense.
No.
Yeah.
That would have made sense.
No.
They probably couldn't get the same actress. But.
Yeah, they just invented a character that
back then, though.
Yeah.
Kolchak's coming back in style.
But that was the other funny thing too, is like his girlfriend Gail just leaves town because she's asked to. She's like, okay, bye. Like,
I think
that was kind of.
I don't think asked to. I think it's forced to, obviously, and I think it's one of those things like you have to leave by sundown. So I think it's a tragic ending, actually. But I would have loved, and yes. Even back in the late 80s, I had a Kolchak sequel in mind.
Sad that you had mentioned this, yeah.
But the whole thing was that Kolchak had an illegitimate son he never knew about that was Gail Foster's kid, since that he didn't she never hooked back up with him wherever she went. So the kid ends up finding Old Man KOLCHAK in the asylum. It's a whole thing. But that was a story idea I had because, the Gail Foster thread is totally left open. Like, she just went away. And you get Carl just sitting there going, I put ads in all the papers in this whole area, just, asking her to find me.
In the 70s, there was no way to find her otherwise, right? So
back in the day, certainly not.
That's something else I like about
so sad.
the end of that movie specifically, but just and KOLCHAK in general. And I think that continues very much with the character of Mulder on the X-Files, is these guys who they're made more heroic by the fact that their pursuit of the truth cost them nothing but pain.
They say this cat Shaft is a bad mother. Shut your mouth. I'm talking about Shaft.
Right?
Exactly.
They are never rewarded. In fact, it only makes their lives harder, but they can't stop.
I did not.
There is a compulsion in them for truth and justice, right? In this sort of way about like, people need to know this and it's not okay. And even if that
it's like the Spider-Man paradigm.
Yep.
Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward. Hey, there goes the Spider-Man.
It's all right there in that theme song. Do you need anything?
It really is. Is he strong? Oh, listen, bud. He's got radioactive blood.
That's my favorite part of the song is the bud in the lyric.
Yeah. Is he strong? Listen, bud.
Yeah.
He is probably going to have to go into a hospital because he has radioactive blood.
That voice is so 60s Stan Lee writing. I was like, listen.
Oh, yeah. Hey, bud.
Yeah.
Hey, bud. Is he strong? Oh.
Yeah.
He catches thieves just like flies.
Yeah, it has the vibe of those old 60s Spider-Man comics.
I love that shit. Anyway, so yes, KOLCHAK the Night Stalker. That's another thing. Since we are, Prodigious Saps, we are now the nostalgia channel. Welcome to
We've been
us
tagged by our
own
listeners. Yeah,
we've been hoisted on our own petard, and
that's right.
I never. Did you guys like season 3 of Petard? I really liked it.
Probably my favorite Captain Petard.
One of the scenes in KOLCHAK that really that I loved, but it just made me laugh because of how almost over the top it was, is when the vampire comes out of the hospital and like the entire police department is there, and they're like it's like right just when you think, wow, that's like everybody's there, another car shows up, and then there's another guy runs in, and it reminded me, it was like, this is like all of a sudden it's the Blues Brothers.
Yes.
And
it's hilarious.
Use of unnecessary violence in the apprehension of the Blues Brothers has been approved.
This happens a lot on the show too, where like the police are just pumping round after round into this guy, and there's Carl KOLCHAK right in amongst them with his camera, and they're just unloading their weapons, and he's just snapped. That happens like in every episode of the show too. Vitally deadly situation.
One thing when you watch all the episodes, you see that they did take their lessons perhaps a little too closely from because the TV movie was a huge success, which is why it became a series.
It held the record, I believe,
as the most watched, highest rated TV movie in history,
decades,
for a long time.
Huge, yeah. But
the whole thing is the writers of the TV show are like going, oh yeah, we got to have the scene with all the cops. And I do love the idea that KOLCHAK, I mean, yeah, he's a good reporter and he has lots of friends in like the morgue and the hospital and so forth, but he knows, okay, the blood bank is being hit. Here's on the police radio. I just love the fact that KOLCHAK can show up while these things are still happening. It's not like after. He's got the fastest car in Vegas because he's like, boom, because he's there when Scorsese walks out and going, what? You guys caught on that I was robbing the blood bank? Is it because I'm dressed like an orderly?
And then he just runs past him like.
Well, I do love Scorsese just like tossing guys around too. Like he's just so powerful.
I do like that, and I love the scene where they chase him into like the suburb, and it's all those cops, and they're shooting at him for a million years, and he's just jumping over fences, and they're fighting around that pool, and I'm like,
something I love in monster movies too, where it's like, how many times do you have to shoot the thing before you realize, okay, the gun isn't working? Like,
even better question. Yeah. Better question. Why does any thief in Metropolis, A, thieve in Metropolis, or B, bother with a gun?
Yeah.
Bother with a gun. After 2 weeks of Superman being in existence and people knowing he existed, why is anyone using a gun at all? They should just go, okay, and put it down.
We took our shot. We knew this would happen. You do feel like if a guy with Superman's power was around, crime in Metropolis would be done.
Done. They would go to Gotham. They're like, I got a better chance with a guy who's got no powers, even though he's a badass, but still.
Well, I always talk about the problem. The downside of the Gotham thing is Superman will fly you to prison. Batman will paralyze you for life. So it's like you have a better chance of getting away with it, but the consequence of getting caught is so much worse in Gotham.
Maybe I could have stuck with the guy who's like the god, but he's really nice, and he tells you should clean up your act.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm gonna walk away from it at least. Yeah, Batman won't kill you, but he'll make you wish you were dead. Like, you'll be on life.
Yes, I know you're about to bring up the Adventures of Superman. Chad, when you were a kid, did you watch a lot of that too in reruns?
The original series?
Yeah,
the original series. Yeah.
I did. I mean, and of course, it's so crazy dated. I really like the first season, though, when it's actually trying to be kind of gritty, which is weird. But I love the fact that in that show, they go bang, bang, bang. And he's like, nope, not feeling the thing. And then the crook will throw the gun at Superman, and Superman will dodge it. I'm like, oh, shit. It's like, he's like, oh, no. It's like, I think it's because George Reeves is like, that's a real gun. Don't throw that at me.
It's just sort of like the bullets won't hurt me, but that could leave a nasty welt.
I could use a welt. Duck. That is one of my favorite. That shouldn't be in the show. They should have never done the gun throwing thing because you just think about it later and you're like, that's stupid.
Anyway. But also, I loved any time when it would turn to the rubber gun and he would bend the barrel. Great.
I love him bending barrels.
One shot, it's clearly a real gun. And then in the next cut, it's now the fakest looking gun you've ever seen.
And I like the episodes when it was a chocolate gun and he just goes,
that's right. Num, num, num.
Not even a thing. Gulp. He was famous in the old show for saying not even a thing. That was his big deal.
Phrase, I think,
Shot you with a bazooka. Not even a thing.
Not even a thing.
So I only saw this recently. I don't think I really knew about this until recently, but I haven't seen it. Hollywoodland.
Oh yeah, you never saw it?
Ben Affleck playing George Reeves.
Yeah,
it's a good movie.
Is it good?
Movie. I like it a lot. Yeah.
It's solid.
It's a tragic story with him.
Very tragic.
Yeah,
and it's based on a book called Hollywood Kryptonite, which is what the movie was going to be called. And I've read Hollywood Kryptonite. It's a book that posits that he did not commit suicide, that there was actually basically a conspiracy of sorts.
There's a lot of weird stuff about the crime scene of his suicide. I mean,
the people were downstairs and he went upstairs feeling all right. And then suddenly, but also his girlfriend was married to Eddie Mannix, who was one of the Hollywood fixers. One of the guys who worked for the studio for decades.
If you've seen Hail Caesar, the Coen Brothers movie, Josh Brolin played Eddie Mannix in that.
Yeah. But basically, Eddie Mannix was the guy that the studios would have intimidate people in the press. He was basically like a mobster. Like, don't let out that, Katharine Hepburn likes the ladies, or we're going to have a problem, okay? If this shows up in your scandal rag, you will not have legs. So essentially the idea of all the people that George Reeves could have had an affair with, and for many years, it probably would have been best if it had not been Eddie Mannix's wife. Mm-hmm. So he was quite possibly murdered.
And the movie really frames it in sort of this film noir bent with Adrian Brody as a private investigator who's sort of putting the clues of this together, and then we're getting the flashbacks to Ben Affleck as George Reeves. People love to show those pictures and go, Ben Affleck's the only person who plays Superman and Batman, right?
Oh, I never really thought about that.
Also, people love to bring up that Diane Lane plays the woman he's having an affair with.
Yes. So Diane Lane played Martha.
Kent.
Did you say Martha?
Yeah. People love it. I saw a meme. Somebody had put a picture of them in bed together from that movie, and then it was the Superman and Batman facing off. Like, you slept with my mom.
Did you sleep with my mom? I like the fact do you remember when the movie Speechless came out in the 80s?
Yeah.
And all I could think was, oh my God, that's just Christopher Reeve and our good friend Michael Keaton. So it's Superman and Batman in a movie together.
Did you ever get a tattoo? Yeah, once. Where? Maui.
And they're battling over Gina Davis.
Which you would.
Yeah. It was the original Batman v Superman. That was what it was originally about. They both wanted to get with Gina Davis.
What did the judge decide in that legal battle? Who ended up with Gina Davis?
You have a lip tattoo? A lip tattoo?
Brief change in subject here. We had a fan ask us, and I haven't found where to watch this yet. I'm probably going to have to wind up buying it. John, do you remember have you ever seen the 1980s miniseries based on Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles?
Yeah, with Rock Hudson.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Yes, as Brandon will tell you, but I do have the Blu-ray set of it. Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yes, one of our listeners said you should do a show on that. And I'd need to get a copy of it because I haven't seen it in years.
I mean, I would have to revisit. Here's where I'm going to land before rewatching. And this is unfair because I'm admitting I haven't seen this since it aired. Right. Mm-hmm. I found it so boring. I found it so boring.
I like it, but it is of its time, of course, like a lot of stuff. I do love Rock Hudson. I feel like you often have that with some sci-fi stuff, though, Brendan.
Well, no, that's true. But in the case of Bradbury, his stuff is poetic and lyrical, and it works on the page. I haven't seen too many adaptations of Bradbury filmically that translate that. I went to go see, Something Wicked This Way Comes when it came out, and that was the first thing I ever saw Jonathan Pryce in as Mr. Dark, and he leaves an impression. He was great. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm sitting there going like, I don't know. No, I'd rather read this. And Martian Chronicles is very heady, and it's not real like what I was excited for. Martian Chronicles. I'm sitting there going, yeah, man, sci-fi, space, fighting Martians. And no, there are Martians in it, but man, they're not what you were hoping for.
I'm not going to say like it's amazing, but I do think they were trying something, and I think it succeeds in a lot of ways, and I enjoy it. But it is
as a grown person, I may
your expectations of it is like an early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. I can't remember exactly what year it came from, but television miniseries.
It is literally 1980. I just looked it up.
Yeah, I knew it. It's later Hudson for sure.
I had to verify this, but Darren McGavin himself appears in
he's in it. Yeah. It's finally Kolchak and McMillan, the team up we've always wanted.
Kolchak and Commissioner McMillan of the San Francisco Police Department.
I used to watch McMillan and Wife a lot.
Sure, he had a mustache and he was out there.
He had a mustache and he had Susan St. George is that her name? Susan St. James, as his wife, and she was great.
The scene from The Martian Chronicles that really stuck with me when I was watching it as a kid was the scene, and I only remember just bits of this from seeing it originally, where there's a guy who owns like a restaurant on Mars or something.
Yes.
And something happens, and he looks through he has this telescope that's pointed at Earth that he looks through occasionally, and he looks through it and he sees that Earth has destroyed itself. I guess through nuclear war or something, and it's like this heavy moment, and that really hit me as a kid at the time. It stuck with me.
I mean, that at that time, nuclear war was on the forefront of everything too. I mean,
it was coming. It was coming up
more because it's not too long after you get things like The Day After and stuff like
that. Yeah, which we were just talking about. 83 is where a lot of that new Cold War panic, nuclear panic stuff started to set in, and Chad and I were both probably just starting high school or getting out of junior high around that time. And it was just unending concerns about who's going to push the button first. Dang. But I just remember that miniseries being boring. But then now I'm looking at this and realizing I will have to watch it because it's also got Nicholas Hammond in it.
Spider-Man.
So it has Roddy McDowall and Bernadette Peters.
I think that's a lot of the charm I find in it is that like everyone in it is great. It is such a snapper. Like watching one of those airport movies and you're like, I don't know if it's good, but that's Jimmy Stewart and that's Dean Martin and that's,
It's like the Cannonball Run.
Yeah, exactly. Where you're just like, oh, Roger Moore is kind of playing James Bond, and there's Burt
The
Reynolds.
Martian Chronicles is kind of the Cannonball Run of sci-fi. Oh, whoa.
Yeah. But that is, I mean, so much of the charm of a lot of those. It's kind of some of the weaker Kolchak stuff is like that too. We always
all the great character actors, showing up.
Get these great guest stars. I mean, even in watch the Night Stalker movies, there's one of my all-time favorite actors, Ralph Meeker, in it, who I always thought was one of the most underappreciated leading men of like the 50s.
And is just a very good. He was one of the better police lieutenant guys, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He was absolutely, and that's the thing about it. Even we would always go like, "Wow, but this person." I mean, I was just saying, like the werewolf episode, you go like, it's whatever, but you're like, "Oh, but Dick Gautier is great in all of his scenes." Like they would bring in these people who would just crush. Even if the material was kind of beneath them, you would get, all these. I mean, and you get people who are about to, like, you get right before MASH, you get Jamie Farr on there and stuff like that. And you get Dick Van Patten in an episode and things like that. Just that was one of the fun things about who you're going to see in each episode. Or you'd get legendary people. I mean, one of the reasons we love Horror in the Heights is that one has so
Phil
many
Silvers.
great. Yeah, and but everybody in it is like an old pro, from like Catskills comedy.
And by that you mean, John, the politically correct term is you say sex workers. They're not called old pros anymore. They're sex workers. So that episode,
old pros down in the red light district.
It's horror in the Heights too. Quiet people, not the other
I
word.
watched that episode, Horror in the Heights, and it was not what I was expecting.
Just to provide context for the people at home. So.
Bunch of sex workers, and I didn't get it. I don't want to see Kolchak paying for it. You know what I'm saying?
I just think that's.
Anywho, yes, that's okay. To our listener, it is in our wheelhouse of something that we would talk about, but I think that both of us would have to do a rewatch but you actually are remembering it much clearly than I am. I did appreciate this. Chad, did you ever read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all of them? Because they had... Well, they could, though, because they had...
Did you read every single word, Chad? No, I don't think I read any of it.
But I don't know.
Well, the first two miniseries are really great. And I enjoyed all of it. It's just it gets really... He goes up his own butt, Alan Moore does.
Alan Moore up his own butt?
And you know what he finds there? Magic. No. Anyway,
so what do you mean by up his own butt? What?
Well, he gets more and more obscure, and then he's also pushing his agendas really hard. Instead of the original concept was literally just, what if we took all these great Victorian characters, had a plot where they meet up and they're forced, and he has a good concept. Then it becomes less about plot and him about pulling ultra obscurity out. And then, like, one of the last miniseries was him basically wanting to just slam modern fantasy fiction, specifically J.K. Rowling. He ends up making the Antichrist basically Harry Potter by the end. You're like, what? What?
Yeah, I mean, it's just Alan Moore's stuff has gotten less and less approachable.
Sure.
And like the idea, it's not even about the ideas anymore. It is like a rant on a page.
Sure.
I mean,
and he's not going to do comics anymore anyway. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 2 takes the approach of he basically, it's post the original story, which was Fu Manchu essentially and Moriarty and all that stuff. But the second one is the Martian invasion of War of the Worlds.
Yeah, Wells' War of the Worlds.
All those Victorian characters. So at certain points, there are also scenes on Mars, which was his excuse, and I fully welcome it, where he's like going, he starts pulling in, obviously John Carter is there and mentioned. So Edgar Rice Burroughs, also Gulliver Jones, who's another relative of mine, but also another human earthling who ended up on Mars in classic old Victorian fiction. And so he's doing all these things, and he includes the aliens from Martian Chronicles, those Martians. Yeah. And they're being enslaved by these other ones, and they're having their wings torn off, and it's all very, very good. But it is something where he just like going, yeah, they all were on Mars.
I mean,
every one of those characters that said they were on Mars were there, and I'm going to make it all work.
One of the idea of that comic is you can just start doing that. You start building all these things, right? It's like, okay, well, if all these characters from Victorian fiction exist, then why not these characters from this canon and this, and all of a sudden all these literary things together? Yes. I mean, you've got the ancestor of James Bond in the original first volume and stuff like that. So he starts connecting all these things throughout. It's I can't recommend the first 2 volumes of it more.
Me either.
And then your mileage will really vary when you start to get into the Black Dossier and when he starts doing the jumps through time and things like that. And eventually, when he starts trying to do the musical comics and stuff like that, some of that stuff is, I mean, it is wild. He's, look, Moore has always got ideas, but the ideas start to overshadow the plot, as you're saying, Brandon, where it's like, I'm going to be experimental. It's like, you still need to tell a story, though.
But he found so much joy and magic up his own ass.
I don't know if Alan Moore has ever found joy anywhere, but I've seen the interviews I've seen.
He's a grumpy guy.
Do you know if he ever corresponded with Philip Jose Farmer?
I don't know if he did or not, but it is. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, and I'm sure that he no doubt. He was a vacuum when he was a kid, comics, literature, all that stuff. So I'm sure he was very familiar with the Wold Newton universe and all the Philip Jose Farmer fictional biographies and stuff like that.
Because we talked about that a little bit in context when we were doing the episode on Time After Time. Yeah. And the great Nick Meyer.
Yeah, Nick Meyer is like Mr. Sherlockania and all that stuff. And Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper, Dracula, whoever, because why not? I love that stuff. And Kim Newman, the great Kim Newman, a shout out to Kim Newman, who wrote Anno Dracula, the entire series of Anno Dracula books.
Once again, so clever. Even the thing I like about Kim Newman is even as he gets more obscure, though, he never comes off with the arrogance of an Alan Moore.
He's also not trying to write great literature. He's writing very solid literature, but it's still, he's being a genre writer, of a certain class and intelligence that I appreciate.
Similarly, he's putting that into the context of history and fictional characters of canon and stuff like that. It's all the Anno Dracula stuff.
Did you ever read Music of the Night, John?
Yeah.
No, Angels of Music?
Oh, no, is it Angels of the Night?
I actually have it behind me, but I can't read it. Oh, yeah, it's Angels of Music.
Angels of Music, yes.
Yeah, that's the one where he basically does Charlie's Angels, but of the Victorian era, or not, post-Victorian, where it's Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, is essentially Charlie. And the agents he has working for him are famous, like Trilby, who is from, Trilby, but we know Svengali. Yeah. Svengali, the famous villain who used mind control to make her a great singer. Well, basically Eric's like, you've got great gifts, and Svengali was a dick. I'm going to help you use your powers for good. So the Phantom of the Opera becomes like this guy sending out his agents, who are the Angels of Music,
that's cool.
Fight crime and stuff. Yeah, it's absolutely great.
Kim Newman stuff is exactly that, where it's like, oh, of course, if this is about getting the singing, then that could connect to fan. He's so nerdy and knowledgeable, but he's also so clever and smart, and it never just feels like, I don't know, I'm going to jam a couple things together.
Yeah, he's got Irma Vep in there from the silent films, and of course the modern remakes.
I mean, his stuff is just pump it right in our veins, right, Brendan? We always talk about Kim Newman,
and he'll work in these references that aren't necessary, like in Anno Dracula, just because. Chad, have you ever read it? I highly recommend it if you haven't.
It's a great book.
Just that first one, even if you don't keep reading the others in the series. But because vampires become known and therefore socially acceptable, because Dracula wins and becomes the consort of Queen Victoria, so vampirism is out in the open. Silver is outlawed because silver fucks up vampires. And the Jack the Ripper murders start happening, just like they did in real world, except for Jack the Ripper is Jack Seward from the novel Dracula, and he's slaying vampire prostitutes with silver scalpels. And because of the silver thing, he works in this little offhand reference, like England's the focal point, but vampirism's kind of going everywhere. And the problem with silver worldwide is it even affected a bunch of silver mines in the U.S. Owned by the Reed family. which is a Lone Ranger reference.
Yep.
Lone Ranger. And he doesn't go anywhere with it. He doesn't like go, and then a guy in a mask showed up. No, it's just a little reference. And if you read it, you go, holy shit.
I've recommended before too that his most recent book I love, something darker than night, I think it's called, which is a sort of hard-boiled detective story.
Oh, yes.
With I believe it's Dashiell Hammett and Boris
Karloff. Teaming up.
Old Hollywood, yeah. It is so much fun, and if you're an old movie nerd, it's the same thing. It's just packed with so many references and stuff in it. I love Kim Newman stuff because it's such open love for this stuff and pop culture, and he's all over a lot of the research we do for the Meet the Monsters show. He is all over every documentary about monsters.
Oh, yeah. They'll always interview him, and he's very distinctive because he's like similar to Alan Moore, who's like a friend of his, just like Neil Gaiman is. But he's like, yeah, I'm an eccentric, and I'm going to embrace it. So he has like this ridiculously huge sort of horseshoe mustache, and he's wearing like frock coats, and he's got this long rock and roll, like he's Ian Anderson or Jethro Tull, and he just looks like a British eccentric, and he's just like going, well, the thing I really enjoy about the Hammer films, and you're like going, of course Kim Newman would be asked about this,
and he's
of
one of
course
those
going to go to him.
He's like a more hyper-focused genre guy version of like a Tarantino, where it's also like, no, let me defend even you. People say that one's bad, but let me tell you about why it works. Actually, like that's the thing. It's actually secretly the best one.
Let me talk about the beast must die in greater detail.
I know, it's great, and it's totally sincere. That's the thing I love about it. He's just like, I love this stuff. I don't really care.
Know what we're doing right now? We're educating Chad.
Yeah.
Which is what this episode should be called, Educating Chad. I do recommend Kim Newman.
This is my education phase.
Yeah, any Kim Newman stuff is...
More, please, like it.
Yes.
One other thing I wanted to talk about, since we have John here, and I know that Chad, you've been very busy because you rock, and I have seen you roll, and you've had your tours of late. So you haven't been able to watch as many movies, but I wanted to have John here to kind of sum up and talk a little bit about the movies of this summer.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm opening up.
What was your favorite yourself, Chad, of the summer that you've seen?
Well, yeah, I haven't seen a lot of them. I'm trying to remember now what I have seen.
Well, you've seen Guardians. You saw Oppenheimer.
And Indy. Indy 5.
You saw Indy, of course.
I have to say, and this may be partially fueled by the fact that it got panned just by so many people. I don't understand why, which we talked about a couple times on the show.
Yeah,
I love that movie. It is not without its faults, but that's the only movie I went to go see twice this summer.
Totally agree. Agree.
I just don't get it. I don't want to get too deep into that because we already did.
I know, and we've made that pretty clear here. That and I similarly, because obviously John and I will be talking about things you haven't seen yet, so maybe we can sway you one way or the other. But I saw Indy after you, and your defense was immediate. I was like, damn, Chad's feeling it. And I was like, yeah, he's a little over the top. Then I went to see it, and I came back going, you're fucking right. Go ahead and bleep because you're fucking right, man. I loved it. And I don't get the general meh of audiences. The general
it's
meh.
So rare I get a message from you, Brendan, with just overwhelming praise. Not that you like dislike things, but you often are a nitpicker going here. But like, I just get a message from Brendan going like, I loved Indy, and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad because I did too. I just whatever faults that it might have, it so nailed everything I needed it to be. I'm somebody who tends to sort of the opposite of Brendan is and this is often a lot of our discussions are like this. The nitpicks can kind of fall away from me. I can sort of ignore them if like the core emotional thing impacts me. And so then oftentimes I can go like, okay, yeah, I see that dialogue was a little weak, or maybe that scene didn't need to be there, something like that. But I'm just going, but I tend to really, especially on like a first viewing, really focus in on this broad reaction. And that movie, I mean, I grew up obsessed with the Indiana Jones movies. That's one of my absolute top franchises, and that character means everything to me. I'll even defend the not as great ones because they have Indiana Jones in them. Like, I mean, like that's the thing. there are things to like in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, even if in broad strokes, I don't think the movie completely works.
Not a single one of those 5 films is a shit burger.
No, and I
like even at their weakest, which would be Crystal Skull. There, like you said, there's a lot in it I do enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe I am obsessed with Cate Blanchett in a black crop hairdo with the bangs.
I think she is having the time of her life in that movie, and I love her as a pulp villain, and she's having so much fun.
Yeah,
you know.
So, John, what is your opinion? Why do you think? Just touch on this a little bit. We're already talking about it. So what the hell?
Yeah, we're there.
Why? What is? I mean, I know that there's people. There's the anti-woke people who have a problem if there's a strong female character in the movie.
Kind of like that's just like that does their opinions almost don't matter. You know what I mean? Like
exactly. Yeah.
Like that's stupid. That has nothing to do with anything. That's not even a conversation.
But then there's people like Kevin Smith and Christian Harloff and stuff who are like both kind of mid on what Kevin was like devastated that they didn't do what he thought they were going to do. But people like Christian Harloff are like, I don't know about the ending. Like, it baffles me that it didn't hit them as hard as it did me. It's like it was beautiful. How could you not see how beautiful?
I think the ending in particular is amazing. Like it's exactly what they did something that the franchise hasn't done. So it's one of those things where it's like you get mad at something for hewing too close to something, and then you get mad at something for doing it. It's so I do think the biggest problem with Indiana Jones is something that Star Wars suffered from for a long time, and still to a certain extent does, and I still is just people have built up in their heads something that nothing can live up to. They are trying to recreate the feeling of being 8 years old and seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that's impossible. Nothing can do that. Mm-hmm. So they're not even. I truly think Dial of Destiny will be something that once it's just on Disney Plus and amongst them, and especially as new people find the franchise, it'll be beloved. I really do think that. Yeah. Removed from all the nostalgia around it, it is such a great final chapter in the saga as a whole. So I do just think there are people who are just like, I don't know. And then, of course, I think there were also people who went in arms folded because it wasn't Spielberg. I saw so many reviews that were just like, well, it's missing the Spielberg magic, though. And you're like, what does that even mean? Like, that's you made that up.
Yeah.
Mangold
reminds me too.
Amazing director. So
but and you kind of knew it was going to be good because he was at the helm.
Yeah. But I immediately had faith once they got him. Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of Brendan and I talked a little bit about Strange New Worlds recently, and I find myself making this mistake too sometimes. Is like people criticizing how silly that show gets sometimes, and then you have to kind of step back and think, guys, when was the last time you actually watched the original series?
Yeah, exactly.
Brendan knows I'm Star Trek is my #1 franchise of the whole. Like that's the thing that means the most to me, aside from Marvel, which is all around me, of course. But Star Trek means that if you go into the other room of my apartment, it's all Star Trek stuff. But that show, it so perfectly captures specifically 60s Star Trek, but reframes it in a way where it still feels modern. But that's it exactly. Mm-hmm. You're going like, dude, just because they didn't do a musical episode in the 60s didn't mean that they wouldn't have in season 4. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't feel, that's not that crazy.
They could have done an entire episode that was like the transformed man, where where Kirk just starts speaking, cool.
Out of play. That's the thing that got me when I saw
this tambourine man.
Yeah,
this tambourine man.
My favorite part of the tambourine man. The end of it when he's like shouting after him as if like the tambourine man is not paying attention to him.
I love it.
Come here, like get back here. No, that's it exactly. And I think that there is a thing where people have created in their mind some of these things. It's so interesting. I just saw somebody ranting about Ahsoka and all the new Star Wars stuff, and they're going like, Star Wars isn't special anymore. It's like, well, that's because it's more ubiquitous. Yes, of course, when it was, but the other thing is that takes some of the weight off of it, right? So if it's something's not as good or whatever, I think that's the thing with Indy is we so rarely got Indiana Jones movies that it would give people years and years to go, what can it be? What will it be? This is the end. And then when it's like good, but not the changing your life, then they're going like, nah, it's pretty disappointed actually.
My main problem with when these franchises, and I don't think it will happen with Indy, even if they decide to spin off Wombat Shaw into her own series, which I would love because I love her.
Yeah.
I even do it with like the singy voice. Yeah. But even if they do, it won't be the same as like with Trek and Star Wars. But I am okay with expanding these universes. My problem is always, and occasionally I bump up against this, even with Strange New Worlds, which is my favorite Star Trek, since probably Next Generation. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
because I've always that's because you will not engage with Deep Space Nine, and that infuriates me because I'm a Deep Space Nine.
I keep trying, and
Deep Space Nine has been trying to get a hold of him. He won't even pick up.
Man, I just you keep saying
I'm getting a call. I'm just going to let it go to voicemail. Brendan, was that Deep Space Nine? Maybe.
Deep Space Nine, man, is the one I keep coming back
to. But anyway, but the thing is, the only problem I have with it is when it starts to despecialize. I believe that the original stuff should be held on like a pedestal, at least as far as canon. Like, my problem with things that, like, Pike is doing amazing things as a captain. And I keep going, well, if Pike was doing all that stuff, why is James T. Kirk's 5 years plus even mentioned? Because Pike is doing all these amazing things. That's why I prefer no prequels. Like, do stuff after where people still go in odd tones. Luke Skywalker, he brought back the Jedi. And, that'd be great because then you're not tainting that. It's the adventures of people post what they did. But when they go backwards and they go, well, this person was even more powerful and awesome, and then you're like, well, then why do we even give a shit about these classic?
The thing I think that I always and we've had this conversation. This is my response to it too. Is Pike was already held in esteem in the original series. I would be more I really did not like Star Trek Discovery because they did in that start inserting new characters. You go, whoa, these are like super important canon characters. And we have all of a sudden Spock has this sister who's like more amazing than Spock and actually like inspired Spock. And just like, that's wild. The thing is, at least this is still like when they talk of Pike, he was a great captain and had this personal relationship with Spock enough that Spock would commit mutiny to save him. So I think this is one of the best prequels in that we knew there were other captains. We knew there were other great captains. They even have Robert April in the show, who is referenced as the first captain of the Enterprise, at least the NCC 1701. Of course, you've got the NX-01, which is Captain Archer, the original Enterprise. But
it's okay. I saw the panic there in your eyes. But
I know.
You just need to get used to how John works.
Off those comments, right? People coming and going, Jonathan Archer was technically the first Enterprise captain.
Well, I don't think it'll be my brother this time because my brother does love him some Trek, but he's not tracking it quite as detailed as you.
That's the thing. Cool because all the stuff has been in my mind because I was watching the Center Seat documentary,
which was great.
There's a whole show about the Enterprise and all the problems that show had.
Yeah,
they hammer on the theme song so much in that episode.
Well, the theme song is the biggest problem in the whole show. I have no question about that. The theme song is. It's anytime I rewatch an Enterprise, it's just like I mean, and there are certainly things that date all the shows, but that is just like it is the early 2000s. As soon as that guy goes, it's been a long time. Jesus Christ. It is 2001. It can't be more 2001.
Okay, so we all agree. Indy 5.
Indy 5 is great,
if not the best. Just a great, awesome movie of this summer, and probably the most fun I had.
I'm not willing to state that because there is one thing I love more than Indiana Jones that came out this summer.
Well, I didn't see it.
And you didn't see it, and that is Mission Impossible. Is, I think,
You've
best.
Just listed, you're about to go, that's my favorite franchise, and it'll be the third favorite franchise you've mentioned.
I think it's the best current running movie franchise. I really do.
And it has a lot of running in it. That's true.
It has so much running, but I just think those are the most it's similar to the way I appreciate Indiana Jones. I really do feel like each one of those is so crafted, is so precisely made. They aren't just churning them out. They don't come out on a regular schedule. It is like each one of those is so. I've talked. Brendan and I just did a thing on our Patreon page where we watched through all those movies because Brendan had only seen some of them. Yeah. And the thing I love, and I kept saying this, is I feel like that's the artisanal summer blockbuster. are those movies where it's like it really is, and those are the biggest events to me. And you see the way they're promoted, where it is like there's very little CGI, and it's all about the very real stunt work. And I just feel like those are. And
also, I do like the little layer of Asiago cheese they put on the top. That's really nice.
Delicious. But it just feels like there's a real crafted nature to those. It's like those are something special in a world where we're so used to the churning out of chapters.
Well, I'll watch it. I'll watch it eventually. I did enjoy every single one of them. I just don't. There's a big disconnect for me with a lot of Tom Cruise things, and also a kind of a disconnect with that character, to where it is an awesome action franchise with awesome action, where I generally never really care about the characters. I can be like, yay, we've got Benji back. I love Simon Pegg. Awesome. Oh, good. And it's like Ethan Hunt. Ethan Hunt just doesn't do much for me other than he'll save the day. And I'm just like, okay, there's not as much personality, and I do like a personality, which is why I wouldn't put it anywhere near an Indiana Jones thing, because they're not pulp adventure. But I'm not asking it to be. It's its own thing. It's its own thing.
I mean, I think one of the things I love about Ethan Hunt as a character is he does not have the personality of, say, a James Bond or something like that, but he is defined by what he does, right? It is the impossible nature of it, and it is this, and especially this. My co-host on one of my other shows, Michael Listman, who also watched through all those Mission Impossibles, he and I did an episode on our YouTube channel after we saw Dead Reckoning, and he talks about like it is starting. The character grows more mythic in these movies, to the point where, like, particularly in this, it's like you just have to believe in this man who can do the impossible. So they're I mean, but in like a superhero way, like they're. Well,
it's true, Chad. You haven't seen it either. I did get something spoiled for me. He does raise someone from the dead in this one, so it's by just laying on of hands, and I'm like, truly, that was an impossible mission.
He doesn't go that far, but there is a moment where it's basically just like someone's in danger, and they just have to go like, Ethan Hunt's going to be here. And by God, if Ethan Hunt doesn't show up. And when I saw it at the premiere screening, the whole audience erupted into applause when he shows up, because it's just there is.
Were they surprised that Tom Cruise was going to be in a Mission Impossible movie?
He is here. Yeah,
he is here. Yeah, no, I just think those to me, and once again, mileage may vary. This is all subjective stuff. Those to me are the most. I saw Dead Reckoning Part 1, 3. It's the only one I saw 3 times this summer. I just kept going back. Wow. I've seen all of them multiple times in the theater, because they just don't feel like any.
He was only going back because he did a viewing each for each of the lead actresses. There was a Vanessa Kirby viewing, there was a Haley Atwell viewing, and there was a Rebecca Ferguson viewing. And I understand
you're the guy with the crushes on all the girls.
I do have a crush on every single one of those, but those are well-deserved crushes.
Yeah,
and then also Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Basically, I have a crush on any attractive British female that can act.
They're all British, well, except for, I guess,
and they are
Swedish, but she does a British accent in the Mission Impossible.
She does.
But no, all right. That's my favorite of, and that will always be.
Did we all enjoy Guardians Volume 3? Did we all enjoy it?
Guardians
loved it. I did see that twice too. Yeah, I forgot.
That movie is once again a perfect wrap up to that trilogy. I really do. Trilogy.
Even with my nitpick, my big nitpick, I loved it.
I was going to say trilogies are so hard, right?
Yeah,
and I think that within, because when I talk about franchise, when I was talking about the franchises I love, right? And Marvel is a strange thing to talk about as a franchise, because it's this whole shared universe. Yeah. But like when you start, I think Marvel has had these really good trilogies within them: the Captain America trilogy, the Iron Man trilogy, and now the Guardians trilogy. And I think the Guardians as a 3-part story may be the best of those.
Yeah, because they were all handled by one person, so he was able to enforce a trilogy on it.
It's so scary to think about. There was a world where he almost didn't make that movie, because even if they used his script, that's one where I just don't think somebody could have come in. Those are one of the things I love about the Guardians movies, and why I've ranked them so high in the Marvel, canon, is they are probably the most personal films. I mean, there's definitely personality in all of the movies. I think the idea that they're directed anonymously is a dumb complaint. I think some are, but I think particularly we're seeing that more and more now. That's what I loved about Multiverse of Madness, right? It's such a Raimi film.
Yeah, absolutely.
But particularly those, you can just feel his heart in every moment of a Guardians film. And
unless it's a character he just doesn't care about, so he throws it in as a joke.
All right, Brendan. Okay,
Adam Warlock.
You
deserve better, Adam.
Adam Warlock is on a journey.
You deserve better.
This is chapter 1 of the Adam Warlock story. All right, he's got to start somewhere.
Someday you'll get your lightning bolt back on your chest.
That's something that really brings me to those movies, because I can really feel, not that it's missing from the other movies, but it just feels so personally made by James Gunn.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love where he ended everybody there. I thought it was a great ending. None of them die. There was this whole discussion about, okay, who's going to die? Which some of them's
well, yeah. We talked about that. He really played with everybody with like the trailers of all the bodies being carried all through it. Yeah. You're like, damn.
But then what I love
one last ride, and they isolate that one quote of like, you ready for one last ride? And like, oh, dude, they're all going out. It's a suicide mission. And then they're like, no, we're okay.
I've seen a lot of discussion of this, and it's something that kind of irks me too, is like anytime anything comes out, it's like, who's going to die? As if death is the only most dramatic. It's the only dramatic thing you can do with a game.
I know.
Indiana Jones, another perfect example. They even talk about there was never a version where Indiana Jones was going to die.
For me, I just always think it's like, who's going to kiss?
Once again, though, that's Brandon with his crushes. He said,
"You think Rocket's going to kiss his little otter girlfriend?"
Oh man, though they went a darker route with that, didn't they?
No, that was a heartbreaker, of course.
I mean, that's the thing too. Is I just think also I really applaud Disney and Marvel for letting that film go to the dark. I do think letting the movie go to the dark places it goes, because the movie is ultimately a life-affirming, positive movie. Yeah. But it has to go to dark places to get there. So when there was like, my kids are so upset, it's like, well, maybe that's kind of okay that like the upsetting stuff upset them.
Well, you kind of have to go, you are talking about Disney. And yes, Disney's become its own thing, but let's go back to Dumbo and let's go back to Bambi. Those things were for kids, and yet generations have talked about how traumatized they are.
Nightmare-inducing,
yeah. Where it's like, because they're like Grimm's fairy tales, are like, guys, there's magic, happiness, love, and romance, but the way is thorny, and not everyone will survive. It's like people will die, and kids do need stories or fairy tales or things that underline, guys, there is a cost. And hopefully you won't experience it, but tragedies do happen.
And I think that's a healthy way to have kids deal with that too. I mean, I think being such a movie kid, that definitely shaped a lot of my, emotional upbringing.
Speaking of Disney and darkness, how about Fantasia? It has Satan himself.
No, that's not Satan. That's Chernabog.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that really scared me as a kid, though. I remember that was we went to. And that really scared me as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, it is one of the best animated things they ever did.
That was back when I was growing up. They would bring out Fantasia every summer, pretty much. And then for a while, between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars would come out every summer too. They put it back in the theaters because there was no home video market yet at that point. Right. I love that stuff, man.
Well, the re-releases, they do still do that now, but it is much more niche. Now it is like, okay, it's a 35th anniversary or something. We'll re-release this. I get that, but I do miss the Disney cycle where it's like, oh yeah, we need to put Cinderella back out. It hasn't been out in like 15 years.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, now they do like the Fathom events which are kind of cool. Sure. I knew Brandon. I did go to the Superman the movie whenever they did that a couple years ago. Superman the movie back in theaters for like 2 nights. I sort of like that too, where it's like we're going to show it for 2 nights at 7 p.m. Like they're going to make it an event, Yeah.
I wish I had seen that, but then again, I've seen it a few times on the big screen.
Yeah, I always love it. I mean, once again, that was where my age. I had never seen it on the big screen, so that was. It was
who are you? A friend.
Dude, I know, but that's always Brendan and I both like. I'm gonna cry, man.
I'm gonna cry. That's gonna get me right there. I'm gonna get
perfect.
All right. So what else came out? Oppenheimer was all right.
Oppenheimer, I consider it's a new American classic. It really is. Like, it's one of those moments sitting in the theater, and I got to see it. And Brendan, you and I, we didn't see it together, but we both saw it in 70 millimeter at the same theater. And it was all consuming. It was one of those moments in film where I was like, I'm witnessing like a movie that's going to be talked about forever. Like, you could just feel this is like a David Lean movie or something like that, where it's like, this is an epic that is. It's just it's an amazing piece of filmmaking. It's
one of those biopic type things where you're like going, all right. Not that I look down on biopics, I don't. But biopics, when they're done well, I mean they're weighted towards. In other words, any director who's good is going to take that material, and there are moments you're going to be able to go, yeah, everyone's waiting for this, and if I do it right, it's going to be devastating. It's where a lot of us are already aware of all the story beats. But I will say that Oppenheimer, never really got this. There have been plenty of, was there a HBO movie from the 90s that was like Fat Man and Little Boy, which dealt with
Paul Newman. But
yeah,
that was more about the military
the
side.
Drop. Yeah, it was about that. But at the same time, Oppenheimer really hasn't been approached. And you're watching that movie going, oh, I'm glad that no one really tainted this and let Nolan be the guy, because Nolan is the guy for it, and it was amazing. And you can't
said, and I think it's so true. I'd heard him say it, and I was thinking about watching the movie. He said, this is the culmination of everything I've learned from all the other films I've done, and you can see that every skill he's picked up, every lesson he's learned from all the other stuff, and he's always been one of my favorite filmmakers, even though I was. We can just move past it. Disappointed in the end of his Batman trilogy, but like across the board, I just think he's an immensely talented guy who I'm always. And it does feel like, oh man, yeah, this movie. It's also one of the best examples I've seen of an epic film that's also very intimate at the same time, and that is near impossible to pull off. And that's really something only somebody who's reached a master status like he had, I think, has the. Number one, the ability to get made. I can't imagine anyone else getting the kind of money needed to make something on this level. You need the cloud.
I didn't like the part at the end where Rami Malek's character comes up and goes, "Some people call me Robin." I was like, "Oh, don't,
just real quick, guys.
Don't.
You can also call me Robin." And that's the other thing too, is it also had the feeling of an old time epic in every single character that shows up is a famous actor. You know what I mean? Like it does.
It was literally like, oh my God. And a lot of them I didn't know.
Cast of hundreds, right? Yeah. And you just go like, number one, Krumholtz is in it. And I love David Krumholtz.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad somebody gave that guy like a great part in a big movie, because I've always really liked that guy.
And Jack Quaid as Richard Feynman.
The guy who really blew me away was Alden Ehrenreich. Who played Han Solo, and I thought he has to carry so much of being the audience surrogate in those sequences with Robert Downey Jr., who is,
and he's great. And Robert Downey Jr.
Downey, I mean, I think that of course,
apparently he can act.
Well, but I mean, people talk about though.
Who knew?
Not that he hasn't been acting. I think I still stand by one of my things always about the Marvel movies is people really took him for granted as Tony Stark. They thought because it seemed so effortless, he didn't get appreciated enough. But I think he's really struggled post Iron Man.
He's the only Marvel character that has had a real arc.
A true, it's amazing. And like I said, I think because he's so perfectly slipped into that part, I was just going like, no, people go like, well, Downey's just doing Downey. It's like, no, it's such a brilliant performance as Tony Stark. But seeing this is the first time where it's like, okay, good. I think he's finally found a post Iron Man thing that is a great use of him and reminds people, right, I am not just a movie star who's famous for playing this iconic role. I'm one of the best actors of my generation. And I've always thought, what an incredibly talented and so smart to work with a great auteur, take a meaty supporting role. And I mean, certainly the Oscar buzz is there because that feels like an Oscar-y part. And the guy who I think gets taken for granted, of course, in Oppenheimer is Cillian Murphy. Because it's sort of like, well, yeah. And he's very subtle, which I think sometimes people write off as not as interesting acting, but he is so compelling.
There's no one in it that's bad.
No.
We can list the whole cast. Everyone's good.
I mean, and what I love is, once again, everybody gets their moments. Josh Hartnett, I thought, was amazing in his couple scenes. Tom Conti is Einstein. Oh my God, incredible!
Yeah.
And that one guy that shows up and goes, "Here's the steak you ordered." That guy was unbelievable. Like, I totally bought him as a waiter. I was like, yeah.
Being a character actor nerd like I am, I'm going like, oh my God, Remar's in this and stuff like that.
Yeah, James Remar. Are you kidding?
When Oldman shows up as Truman, that I truly had no idea.
Oh.
And Gary Oldman is,
and you're like, what? How are you this guy who's been Churchill and Truman and Dracula?
I truly do think he might be the greatest actor ever. Really, I do think he's in the running.
Wow. He's in the running.
Yeah. I think I mean, it's, those are hard, broad strokes things to say, but he's one of the first.
By the way, Chad, have you watched Slow Horses at all?
Yes. Yeah, I saw both seasons.
And he's pounding in that. What a perfect, incredible role for him. He's talked about that.
And it's a role where he doesn't have to get in shape. In fact, it's actively discouraged.
He's talked about that. He goes, I would be content to do this forever. If they want me to do 20 seasons of this guy, I will never
such a great character
in this.
It is an amazing character, and really, I'm sure he's like, oh, gift from the gods.
But then what's great,
I just love how he just never admits that he cares about anybody, but clearly he does. He's like, oh, fuck off.
Not to completely mention about that show, but what I love about that show too, very much so, as in my beloved Columbo, which is one of my favorite TV shows ever.
Columbo's amazing.
He's the guy who everybody writes off as the drunk, but as soon as you see, it's like, oh no, he's the best, actually, isn't he?
That guy has the
it on. All you have to see is once he clicks into
steel
it,
trap brain.
He's just the best. But everybody writes him off because he's this pudgy, farting drunk of a man. But then,
wait, are we still talking about him or me?
Brendan, we've talked about your drinking, man.
Not nearly enough about the farting. Anyway, so. What else came out this summer? Barbie is great. Barbie's great. If you're going to talk about highly recommended, Chad. I know that it's the biggest movie in the world, but it's just good.
Oh, what's funny is that I remember when you first brought that up, I hadn't even heard of it. And,
what?
And you had to qualify, say like, no, it really looks good.
I've had to say
just with the trailer.
I've had to say the same thing to our mutual friend Jerry over and over again, because Jerry's willing to watch pretty much anything, but at the same time, he does go in, and I'm guilty of the same thing, preconceived notions.
Sure.
Because it has taken many conversations of him going like, really? Is it really good? And I'm like, it is!
The whole run of Barbie, when they announced they were doing a Barbie movie, like anybody, I went like, who cares? And then they said Greta Gerwig was going to direct and she was going to write with Noah Baumbach, and I'm like, well, I love their films.
Yep.
These are like serious indie auteurs. So you're going like, okay, well, that's going to be interesting. And then I saw the trailer, and I think I said this to you, Brendan. We saw the trailer in front of some movie we were at, and I said, man, that is a swing, and that is either going to really work or really blow up. Like, but that excites me. I love that kind of, for lack of a better word, dangerous, like, studio filming, taking a big recognizable IP and going like, we're going to go all in on this thing and have this very specific take. And yeah, it might not work, but if it does, and it did, it turned into this incredible film that is, I think the real magic trick of it is both an examination of and celebration of. So it's like, it's critical in all the right ways, but it's not a takedown either. It's also this loving tribute to, the script on that movie, and of course all the production design stuff, but like, when you have that kind of level of talent and
score,
money,
the songs,
right. But I'm just saying, particularly the script, and truly Ryan Gosling's performance. Everybody's great in it, but I really think Gosling as Ken is like, I will be upset if he isn't nominated for it. I really do think
he should be.
It is a level of commitment from an actor to something that if you're not 100% committed to, or even remotely outside of, would be a disaster. And instead, he leans in 1,000,000% into this absolutely insane character.
It's great. And now I'm just sitting here going, I am just counting the days till Wes Anderson's Hot Wheels movie comes out. I am.
Well, here's the problem. Everybody is saying this, and it's true. And it's absolutely true. Hollywood is and that we already know, because what stuff has been greenlit. They're learning the absolute wrong lesson.
Oh, they always do. They always do. This is what people want.
Lena Dunham is making Polly Pocket, and you're like, no one wants that.
God.
Lena Dunham is making Polly.
You haven't heard that? Lily Collins is playing Polly, but it's like that's exactly the wrong thing because Barbie was such a specific. It's such a singular vision, and it's such a perfect. I compare it a lot to the Lego Movie because I think similarly these are really smart filmmakers who are tapping into something very primal about these toys.
The Lego Movie surprised me. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it.
Yeah, but then now you're trying to, and they are making a Hot Wheels movie. Like that is being greenlit, and there's going to be a Barney movie that they're saying is going to be more like an A24 horror movie, and you're like, oh, don't. That's just because it's cynical, right? The thing that's great about Barbie is it's so sincere. It's so much like I was talking about with James Gunn. You can really feel Greta Gerwig's heart in the center.
And before anyone who actually knows about stuff I've created comes at me and goes, oh, you're one to kind of make a argument about, cynical reinterpretation of childhood characters, Mr. Breakfast of the Gods, I'll say, yeah, you're right. Anyway, but that also came from deep love also.
That's what I'd say. It's like, and you can feel that when you read Breakfast of the Gods. No
I hope so. I hope people got the fact that I may do terrible things to the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, but
the
I
other
love
thing
them.
about it, you weren't the fourth comic book based on marketing material. You know, I mean, that's sort of the thing too. Is I sort of feel like you kind of can only do Barbie once, or like I said, like Lego Movie came out. Now years have passed. Barbie comes out. These feel like. These just sync up. Now when you're trying to create that, instead of, as I've seen several people go, instead of just, the lesson is hire really good filmmakers who have a take on IP. It's like, no, Indie Auteur toy product. That's what we do now.
Now we need to all group together, the three of us, and finally start pitching our GoBots movie.
I probably could write a GoBots movie.
Is it Mattel? Is it Mattel that owns Barbie?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mattel owns Barbie.
That is kind of I'm sure that's lightning in a bottle, probably, this movie. I haven't seen it yet, but, it's pretty much universally praised. But it's like, I want to see what the meetings were at Mattel about somebody saying, no, just let Greta do her thing.
That would be interesting.
Oh, no, let Greta do her thing.
She's going to mock us. Okay.
She's going to mock. Yeah. That's the thing. And I think that's the thing I'm very, once again, much like I'm glad Disney was willing to let Gunn go to some of the darker stuff.
There was a level of trust.
The Barbie movie isn't like a middle finger to Mattel, but it definitely pokes fun at it and pokes fun at capitalism. And I have seen the left-wing backlash because, of course, you've got, once again, the woke, anti-woke people. But the left-wing people going like, well, yeah, it's anti-capitalist, but it's still going to sell a bunch of merchandise and stuff like this. Like,
it's a Barbie movie.
I don't know what to tell you then. Like, of course, people want now the Barbies from the movie or the whatever, then there's shirts and
they're re-releasing the Alan doll that Michael Cera's playing, which was a famous. They're all great. Again, everyone's great in it. Alan was a one-off doll from the 60s that was a flop, which is one of the things they're mocking in the movie. But because the movie makes it great, now they're like putting Alan back out.
Alan's whole thing was you could put Ken's clothes on Alan. It was just another male doll that you can also put your Ken clothes on.
And then you have Michael Cera in the movie going like, all of his clothes fit me.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And they're like, and what do you do? He goes, I can wear any of Ken's clothes.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. And this whole idea that in this world full of all these Barbies and Kens, there's just one Alan.
There's just one Alan.
And it's Michael Cera.
So it's highly recommended. And then another one you haven't seen, Chad, Blue Beetle.
Blue Beetle.
Now here's the thing.
That DC had a good summer, in my opinion. Both of the DC movies that came out this summer, I really liked.
What was the other one?
The Flash.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
We were big fans of the Flash.
No, I did. Not so good for turnout.
Right? Well, yeah, I did like the Flash. But
we were both. But I really enjoyed Blue Beetle. I think Blue Beetle is very charming.
Yeah. For some reason, when you said DC's having good summer for movies, I started thinking about Shazam 2, which I still haven't seen.
That's what I thought first, yeah.
And I jumped over the Flash, even though that's not fair. I really enjoyed the Flash, and I still wish it was a thing where they would go, we're going to give them a little bit more money to finish those effects. Because I think
with all the time they had.
Yes.
God damn it.
similar to the Incredible Hulk, which we've talked about before, which I think
Very
is a really
underrated.
good Hulk movie.
Really underrated
And it's really solid, but I think the effects house really blew it. It's not great.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I mean,
I think that's the same thing here. But Blue Beetle, like John's saying, and the reason I think James Gunn's like, yeah, no, it's part of what we're going to be doing. It's because it refers to the DCU, but not in a way that is totally locked into anything Snyder ever did. There's mentions of Superman and Gotham and Batman.
They just exist, though. Like, it's just like,
they just exist.
Where Superman is, or they go like Central City. You mean where the Flash is from? Or
yeah, they mention Central City.
You mentioned Batman. They mentioned Wonder Woman, and just that they exist. There's no it's not like Black Adam mentions all those people too, but you like see a drawing of Jason Momoa as Aquaman or something like that.
Yeah. It's not saying we're the Snyderverse.
But the thing that's really good about Blue Beetle is it's really small. It's actually it didn't cost. I think where the thing that will save this movie in the long run is it didn't cost anywhere near as much as The Flash, right? And it's purposely small. It's more character based. It's more of a story about this family and this kid. I really do feel like it's
everyone's great in this one.
It's kind of like we talked about this coming out of there. It's kind of like if you put an Iron Man movie and a Spider-Man movie together and you kind of merge them. That's what you get from Blue Beetle.
You get the hapless teen whose life is not a bed of roses, and he gets with great power comes great responsibility kind of thing. Mm-hmm. He gets an Uncle Ben moment. He gets all that kind of stuff. And even though it's an alien artifact, it's very mecha and tech is what it seems like. And there's a lot of inside mask, like you get in the Iron Man helmet, like the heads up display, all that stuff.
Brendan, with the big, because it got pretty good reviews for the most part.
Yeah.
One of the big criticisms was that it's pretty generic, like it follows the sort of formula of a super origin story. But the thing that it does is what it lacks in the originality. It comes up with what lacks in the originality of plot, I should say, is it has so much character to it, though.
Well, that's the deal, is that it is very stock origin story, but it is the setting in a largely Hispanic Latino community, and it's not just about Jaime, it's about his entire family. You get to know them, you care about them, there's jokes and there's heart-touching stuff. It's good.
That I love so much about it is
that Beetle is completely blue. There is not. You're sitting there going, surely there's another color. No.
We were talking about, because I was ready for it after The Flash and some of the other stuff they've done. The effects actually are pretty good. I loved all the bug ship stuff and the costume. Oh. The costume is one of my favorite superhero. Like the translation of the costume in the movie looks incredible.
And as I told you, Chad, not maybe on our podcast, but I think you were asking me about it. But I do love that, and this is the kind of thing that would have driven me crazy as a nitpicky guy. I was afraid that there was supposed to be all Jaime's story and ignore the legacy of Blue Beetle, which as a character, not an original DC character, but he is one of the oldest superheroes. Yeah. Clearly, of course, he was literally a comic book version where they said, can we just kind of borrow stuff from the Phantom and borrow stuff from Superman and borrow stuff? You're like, yeah. And then Green Hornet is on the radio. Green Hornet. What if we change a color and the bug? Yeah. Okay. How about a Blue Beetle?
They didn't work too hard on that.
He's not very original, but he was one of the original heroes. So this movie honors the 60s Blue Beetle that became the one that, Ted
that
Ford.
Was where I was getting some of the Ant-Man vibes,
the
right?
Bug sheep,
the stuff.
Bug ship.
Yeah,
yes, very much an Ant-Man kind of thing.
Clearly that has to be one of the reasons why James Gunn has said, okay, you may pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this one was, I think the thing that really saved this as well was, I think this one probably was already a little bit less tied into the Snyder stuff. And so then it's like,
it came late enough in the schedule. They're like, play it very light. Play it very
sever
light.
Some of that and massage some of that, do a couple of reshoots. We can make this fit into a new universe.
Yeah.
And no, I love all that. I mean, Brandon, you and I saw it we were pretty much alone in the theater. And so, which was good
because
like
every 8 people in the theater.
But I'm saying that was kind of good because in the opening titles have all these like newspaper things of history. So we're like, oh my god, Ted Kord, oh my god, OMAC, oh my god,
yeah,
like,
oh my god, Dan Carey, oh my god, yeah. I was definitely nerding out on everything that was a reference to continuity.
It's just fun.
It is. It's a fun superhero movie.
I think both of the DC movies that came out this year, though, did a great job of making DC movies fun. And certainly one of the criticisms of the Snyder stuff is just how dark they are and how
I really didn't like the one little bit. I mean, it's very quick, but the whole thing with Jared Leto coming in and he's got all his tattoos and I didn't like it.
Of course. No. There's folks.
Worst cinematic Joker of all time.
No, because Joaquin
worst.
But that's my. I'm not.
Well, I don't count that. That's not a superhero verse.
It's Elseworld. I hated that movie.
Yeah,
so much.
Elseworld.
Yeah. I really.
I can't speak to that myself.
Joker couldn't stand it.
We talking about DC. We've talked almost every week. We've touched on the upcoming Superman Legacy a little bit. John, what is your take on that? Are you hopeful? Are you worried?
I'm incredibly hopeful for it, mainly because I do think, and I think I was saying this even before anything when they just said they were going to make a new Superman thing. Is like, well, I do think, and I know there are those Cavill fans who love him, and I also really like Henry Cavill as the character. Like, he's a great choice, but I don't understand the passion of he's the best, the only, how could you ever, I have no interest in somebody else, because number one, he's far from the first, and he's not the best because Christopher Reeve will never be top. You just can't. You just can't. He just was Superman. But no, I'm so hopeful for it because I have friends who are big Superman fans who are really worried about James Gunn's take. But I do think James Gunn is, and we'll see, but like, is such a fan, is such, and I think he will match the material. I don't think he's going to make a Superman movie that feels like a Guardians movie. We've never seen him make something like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's incapable of it. And I'm really excited about this actor playing the part. I love that he's established but not known particularly. Yeah. I think he looks great. I saw him in the HBO series We Own the City, which I thought he was really good in. I'm excited about the casting. And of course, I'm curious about the Justice Society members or whatever who are going to be in it, or the Authority.
Yeah, man, hard to even guess what he's up to.
But also like a cinematic Mr. Terrific, and my dreams of Nathan Fillion as a Green Lantern are coming true. God. I'm
so excited for that.
That's great. And all the stuff that Gunn has referenced so far.
But if he doesn't have the bold cut, I'm walking out of the movie.
I'm out. He confirmed it's going to be there.
Yes?
Really? Gunn said, I'm not going to say the entire reason I did this was to make my friend Nathan get that haircut. He basically is just like, well, I'm making Nathan get the haircut.
Man, if Guy Gardner shows up with the bowl cut again, I'm like, James.
It's like he's like, you get to be Green Lantern, Nathan, but you're gonna have that hair. I love it. I am so excited. Once again, Gunn they talked about when he worked at Marvel. He's like, I think I'm the only guy here who's still reading the books on a monthly basis. His love for comic books is so clear, and I have no reason to doubt that sincerity.
Too bad we got stuff with Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane.
That casting is also incredible.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
I'm so excited to see whether or not I think there's going to be a Lex Luthor. I heard him Gunn was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, and Rosenbaum was asking about his take on Lex Luthor. He goes, well, who's to say Lex is in it? I'm like, there probably will be a Lex Luthor. Maybe he's not the main villain, but No,
I'm like I said before, I kind of suspect he wants to make his own Superman movie, but he also knows it's launching something. So he doesn't want to make the same mistake they always do, including Brian, who shall not be named singer. Even he made the same mistake, which is just going back to the same Superman versus Lex.
Well, and I think, I think
this is like what they were trying to do with Amazing Spider-Man with Norman Osborn, where they drop him in and they're going to build to him, but you just have him in the background doing stuff. I have a feeling that's what will be.
And
He'll have cast Lex. He'll be in the background.
I love, of course, it's non-origin story, but it's an early story. That was something I love so much about the Matt Reeves Batman movie. Was it's like, it's an established Batman, but still getting his feet under him. Batman,
right?
Still being freaked out about being very high up in a building and jumping off in a wingsuit.
I really enjoyed the Grant Morrison. Certainly Grant Morrison's
the New 52 action that Grant Morrison wrote.
Really good. Like about like young, like I don't know what I'm quite doing as Superman. I am Superman, but I don't
Chad,
know.
I know that you weren't keeping up with the New 52 stuff, which is smart. It was a big mistake. But there are little good things in there. Swamp Thing was great during New 52.
Yeah, the Scott Snyder Swamp Thing is great. The Scott Snyder,
but also Grant Morrison. They said, "Do you want to start Superman over?" When they did New 52, so he did. Right. Early days with literally Superman Clark in a t-shirt and jeans, and like he's not got the costume yet, and it's him learning like, oh my god, how much pressure do I need to stop this train? It's like him thinking on his feet and also being very much like a modern version of the original Golden Age Superman, which is a social reformer and kind of a badass, where he's like going, yeah, I know that the law you'd be freed, the second I put you in jail, but I'm going to scare the crap out of you, Mr. Slumlord, or whatever it is. Just like the old days where he's like going, hey, you're beating your wife? I'm going to throw you into the Metropolis River. And just like, boom. Like, what?
Also the Gunn is so good about, and I think, especially in the interviews I've seen where he's just loosely talked about his takes on it and stuff like that, is unlike Singer, and I actually generally like Superman Returns, and I
like it too, but it just made all these big mistakes.
But the thing I was going to say is Singer wasn't really like a comic book guy. He was
a fan of Donner's film.
What I think Gunn has talked about is he really is looking at the whole of Superman across all of it and going, and we've already seen that in some of his stuff where he's just like, I want to borrow a little bit of this and a little bit of that, put that here. And it's just, I just think he's so savvy about what it is. And he seems to really get what makes like a crowd pleaser of a movie. And he's also
Mr. Mixes Pitlick.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too, that people, the humor of his movies, really, a lot of people put so much weight on that and also miss that he is also one of the most incredibly emotional and heartfelt superhero filmmakers. All of his movies, while they have lots of snark in them, are actually incredibly sincere. And the snark almost
cried 3 times during Peacemaker.
Man, Peacemaker. I mean, I was crying all over Guardians Volume 3 and all of his movies. Suicide Squad, even the Ratcatcher backstory got me,
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
Guy's a good writer.
Yeah. That's the thing. I think that's the thing is people focus on the snark because that's almost like he's like, if I act this snarky over here, then I'm going to make you cry over here and you're not going to quite be ready for this. And
right.
So the thing is, I think he will get the heart of Superman. And like I said, that's my main thing is just if you get the heart of that character and what he has described of his take on Superman sounds exactly like what I want.
And he has red trunks, then you've got it.
He's talking about the costume wanting to be familiar but new at the same time, which I'm like, because there have been so many takes on it, right? So he's like, I want to put my own stamp on it, but also have it be totally recognizable.
The stamp is in the shape of red trunks. Thank you, John, for being here. I'm going to shut you up because I'm hungry now. It's lunchtime for Jones.
I think every podcast Brandon and I do together ends with him going, I have to go eat now.
Well, it's because I don't eat. I mean, I had that bowl of cereal, but that was like hours ago. Yeah, I'm like, it's 4:20 now, and I haven't had lunch.
So again, to plug the shows, right? We've got Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters.
Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters.
Ongoing.
Brandon
on Podbean, you can find it right anywhere.
It's on whatever podcast you offer. We also have a Patreon where you can listen to episodes before they come out, which is cool. If you guys do love, this is the Nostalgia Podcast, right? I do a whole other podcast that is about the 1970s Star Wars comic books. It's called May the Panel Be With You. It's here on YouTube. It's both a video podcast and an audio podcast.
Which Brendan himself did the cover artwork for.
Brendan did do our cover art, which if you're a Star Wars fan and a Superman fan, I think you'll really love it because it's the Star Wars characters recreating the first
Action Comics
Yeah,
number 1.
it's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. Not my idea, though. That was Grigoni. Brilliant idea.
Was,
but then I drew it.
Grigoni came up with that idea. And of course, as soon as I told Brendan, he's like, I know exactly what that would look like.
Yeah. Yes.
So that comes out every week. Like I said, that's on YouTube or whatever podcatching. So it's May the Panel Be With You. If you love, once again, the nostalgia of stuff. And it's very fun to look at Star Wars before they really know what Star Wars even is, right?
And go ahead and give us Action Shelf as well, right?
Also, I do the Action Shelf, which is currently on hiatus and is kind of evolving into its own thing, but all the archives are there. The Action Shelf is a show where myself and a co-host, Michael Listman, we were watching through all the B straight-to-video action movies and reviewing them. So anything you see on Netflix or in your Red Box that has Steven Seagal or Bruce Willis in it now. And you're like, who's watching that? Well, we always said, that's us. We're watching that. And that's evolving into a new show that will be in the same realm as that, though. So stay tuned.
John's got 85 podcasts, but we're going to cap that there.
The patron shows, Brendan and I, you can, if you...
Price is Right.
We do Price is Right now about Vincent Price. We did all of the Kolchak thing. You can listen to the first episode.
Nights Talking was
if
our
you
Kolchak.
want a taste of that over on the Meet the Monsters feed, we did put up the first full episode of that for free. And then if you're interested in that, you can go to our patron page and check that out. So,
and of course, we can't not mention Tesla City Stories, which is how you two knew each other. Right?
That's right. I'm in the cast of Tesla City Stories.
And I direct it, and I act in it, and it is a recreation of Tesla Broadcasting Company radio scripts from the 1940s, live on stage, and we do have one season of podcasts that you can listen to, also on Podbean or wherever you find it. Tesla City Stories. We're in the middle of
recording the second season, so there's more coming.
We are.
And is the fundraiser still going on?
It just ended.
It just ended. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't quite get to 10,000, but you can look, if you see me on the street, slip me a $5.
I think we might have a PayPal or something if you go to our website. I think
I believe it is still open for
if you do get to 10,000, will you finish saying the word? Will you say
yes?
10,000?
That's Brendan's promise.
That's my pledge. If we get to full 10,000, I'll finish that word. I wonder how it ends. I don't know. Spoiler alert.
And of course, we've got the Prodigious Saps Patreon account, which if you want to help us out, keep these episodes coming. You'll get early releases of all the episodes, extended versions of the episodes.
If there's something you want us to rewatch or watch for the first time and talk about, we will accept donations for that too. You would have to pay me to watch The Powers of Matthew Starr again.
Oh, not me.
But if you want me to, I will.
No problem. I'll watch Powers of Matthew Starr all day.
And Mr. Merlin, followed by Mr.
Merlin.
Of course.
All right. John, thanks so much, man. This has been great. We will definitely do this again.
Please.
Many times, I expect.
Sure.
So thanks, y'all, for watching. We will see you next week here on PSAPs.
Bye.